from Worcester Metropolitan Borough Council.
Thanks, Councillor Waters.
Sorry for being late, Chair. Councillor Naheem Akhtar from Coventry.
Councillor Cathy Baton, representing ABCA.
Good morning, Lindsay Roberts, Statutory Scrutiny Officer for the Combined Authority.
I am Dan Essex, I'm the Governance and Scrutiny Manager at the Combined Authority.
Morning members, my name is Kieran Stockley and I'm the Head of Legal Services.
Good morning, I'm Councillor Jamie Tennant from Birmingham City Council.
Councillor Bromley, Birmingham City Council.
Good morning, I'm Councillor Anne Marshall from Worcestershire. I am a non-constituent member.
And I'm Amanda Tomlinson and I'm co-opted business representative.
Good morning, I'm Rob Lamond. I'm in the Housing Property Retail team here at the Combined Authority.
Good morning, I'm Deborah Caton. I'm Head of Growth for the Midlands from Homes England.
Thanks everybody and welcome to those people who haven't attended this committee before. Thank you for making the time to come along. If I pass to Lindsay for apologies, please, Lindsay.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, apologies received from Councillor Paul Moore.
Thank you. That does mean that we are chorus. And then I'll move on to item 2, declarations of interest as per the agenda. Do I have any declarations of interest from anybody?
Yes, Chair. So if I can declare an interest in items 7 to 9 as a representative of WMPAP, the West Midlands Housing Association Partnership.
Thanks for that. And then moving on to Chair's remarks. So just to update people, it's been on the agenda now for some time in terms of discussion of oversight and monitoring of the arm's length companies. I had a conversation on the 25th of August with Julia Cleary from Governance Services to discuss the paper that's currently being worked upon by herself and Helen Edwards regarding the oversight and monitoring of ALMOs. The suggestion at the moment is that these will report directly into ARAC on a 6-month basis, although that paper is yet to be formally agreed through the Executive Board, with the growth company reporting to the Exec Board every 4 weeks to present business plans and updates on those. So that's been an ongoing concern for a while about the governance arrangements for arm's length companies, but I think that will, once that's formally accepted, I think that will provide some assurances going forward. I just want to comment as well, because I know this is going to be quite a challenging year, I think, for scrutiny in many ways. And it's also going to be a fairly politically charged year with the expectation of the mayoral election taking place next May. But I just want to remind everybody that the focus of scrutiny has to remain as impartial as possible. We're here to ask questions, to listen to the evidence and to make recommendations based on what we hear. So as far as is possible, the committee needs to continue in the vein that it has done so to date and remain as impartial as possible, while still holding the Combined Authority and the Mayor to account in its delivery against its aims and objectives. I just felt that it's important to set that out at the start of today's meeting. So we'll move swiftly on to the minutes, which you've all had a copy of. I'll take them first for accuracy. Hi, Laura. I'll take them first for accuracy and then for matters arising. So accuracy for page 1, page 2, page 3, 4, 5 and 6. And then we will take any matters arising from those minutes. Laura provides us a very timely moment because there's an update from yourself on the matters arising from the minutes. So that's very timely.
The earlier meeting finished, so Linda should be on her way as well.
Lovely. So if we can move on to matters arising, do I have any matters arising from page 1, page 2, I can just note that 136A, the site visit to Green Square Accord, did happen in August. A few of us were able to attend that, which I certainly found inspiring and extremely interesting and very timely given the discussion on the papers that we're going to have today about how feasibility of upscaling and increasing the pace of delivery through the opportunities that modern methods of construction present for us. So that was a very timely meeting. 136B, Laura, you were going to give us an update on how the social housing fund will be devolved.
Yeah, so following the announcement of that in February 23, it was agreed that the mayor and portfolio leads would set up a task and finish group. Sorry, I'm normally pretty loud. Did everybody hear that? Okay. That they would set up a task and finish group of officers from across the 7 authorities to make a proposition about how the funds would be allocated. And that group unanimously agreed to propose that the funding was split equally by 7 so that each of our local authority areas could benefit and address the issues that were specific to their needs. The Department for Leveling Up received approval from Treasury for the funding at the end of May. Subject to the agreement of the terms and conditions of the fund and the monitoring requirements by the combined authority and the local authorities. So those requirements for monitoring include each local authority to set out their business plan for delivery and evaluation. And each local authority is currently finalizing that documentation ready for today in order to provide the assurance that DLUP need to release the funds. So the task and finish group has approached the process in a very pragmatic way, very collaborative way, in order to secure, even if they're small, those vital funds for the improvement work. So that's the update, Chair. Thank you.
Thanks, Laura. Councillor Kettle.
Laura,
Try using Councillor Burrows is for the next one along.
Seem to have feedback.
Try Councillor Burrows because he seems okay.
Sorry.
Third time, okay.
Laura, you mentioned that it would be, it's the location.
Okay. Yeah, just shout.
Yes.
Okay, you mentioned that it would be divided proportionally in the 14 million quick sort of business. In what ratio? How's it going out?
Literally the number divided by 7. So
That short-change Birmingham.
it was the decision by the officer group that was who was asked to do it. They came to an agreement that would be best for the region. So I suspect if they didn't do it by population, so every local authority will receive an equal amount. So that was the decision of that group that was tasked to do it. So not on stock, not on population, but literally just by 7.
I've always considered the divvying up of money available should be divided into 10, because Birmingham is sort of 4 times bigger than anyone else. Birmingham should be entitled to 40%, but the rest of us should be entitled to a 10th. And that's where I come from. In that, if you do it equally, I don't see that Birmingham cannot come back with a fair grub and say, hang on, pro rata, we are having a short change, you know.
That's why we asked that's why the task and finish group was set up. It was set up to come to an agreement. It came to that agreement. And that was the agreement that the 7 came to. So I'm not really in a position to make a comment. It was set up for that reason, and that was the decision that they took. And obviously Birmingham would have been represented there, so I'm sure they would have made representations accordingly.
I'm presuming that the leaders were involved in that discussion.
Well, it was the leaders that asked the task and finish group of the officers to make that proposition. So in that way, absolutely.
Jamie, did you want to make a comment?
Yeah, Councillor Kettle's already talked a bit about it. Do you know, I appreciate you, I don't know if you were on this working group, but do you know why they made that decision? And if you don't, you reckon they can give us an update? Because this does seem vastly different.
So we were not, it was a group of the authorities and not the combined authority, but I can go away and find out, and I can also find out which officer from Birmingham represented you at that. Okay.
Thank you. Any other matters arising from page 2? Matters arising on page 3, 138, Laura, if you can just give us an update on Warwickshire, please.
I believe they have written to the Secretary of State to say that the timing is, there's not enough time in their view to go through that process. So they're not pursuing becoming a constituent member of the combined authority.
Thank you. Any other matters arising on page 3? No. Matters arising from page 4. Dan, I believe, is going to provide an update to 140 on item 6 on the agenda, so we can leave that bit till then. Councillor Bateman?
Just on 141, question I asked about the extension. I wonder if we could have an up-to-date, because we ought to be able to have it.
So driver training has commenced. Councillor Bateman, you'll see the trams, should see the trams running down to the station. So we need to get through the safe driver training, and then it should be within about 3 weeks' time, subject to driver training going smoothly. But there are trams running on the track in Wolverhampton, and we are very close to opening. But like I said, we just need to get through the driver training, which has started.
Yeah, I come in myself this morning and I use it over the weekend, including the walk, which is probably good for my little ring. But what I would like now is, because we're being constantly asked about when it's been, what the date is, you know, there must be an opportunity to give a specific date now. We've gone on and on and on and on. It's like the never-ending story.
Yeah, we will absolutely provide a date when we are 100% sure that we will open on that date. The one thing we don't want to do is to raise expectations and passenger expectations and then not meet it. So as I said, we are in driver training, so there's a high level of confidence that it's going very well. There's some signaling issues that still need to be worked through. Teams are working through that. And when we are confident that we have a date that can be shared with the public, we will absolutely be, and we'll work closely as we do with Wolverhampton and the transport lead and your officers there. Some of the works that are remaining, Councillor Bateman, are signaling works that the city needs to get done with us. So again, until the city is confident and we're confident the signaling works are ready to go, then we'll just hold off raising passenger expectations.
I understand that. Believe you me, I understand that. But I still think, as an elected member, we can be taken into the confidence, as explained just now, and a date being forthcoming. I hate being kept in the dark like a mushroom. And I do feel strongly about it, but I also know what my duty is and my fiduciary duty in relation to that. And I'm not likely to burst that open. But I do want to know, especially now, because it just keeps rolling on and on and on. I will take it up with the issue with the local authorities. You would expect me to do that. But I would like to have a date that's so that I know what we're aiming for. If not, I don't see the point of me being here.
That's right. Well said.
Does this need to be picked up by the new transport, your representative of the new transport scrutiny group?
No, it needs to be signalled to me as a member of this authority and also a member of Wolverhampton about the date and time that we're aiming for as the officers know it now. And if there's issues that relate to the city, then, you know, I'm in a good position to see whether or not that can be adhered to make sure that what's being planned by the combined authority actually takes place. I do not like being kept out of a decision that is clearly being taken. I've been on the tram this morning, I was on the weekend, and people talk to me all the time about it, both members and also in relation to the public. But I do know the dividing line. I know what I'm supposed to do, especially when it's spelled out in a letter. but I do need to know what the situation is, because I'm not going to stay for these meetings if I don't.
Can I just ask the member of the public not to interject, please?
So I'm very happy to provide that update to you. I will do that in line with your officers in your council and your transport lead for Wolverhampton, whom we met with last week. So I just want to make sure that's all tied up, but we'll pick that up outside of this meeting.
Thank you. It has to be outside this meeting as well, because obviously it's a public recorded meeting that goes on to YouTube. Okay, so page 5, matters arising. If we go back a little bit, Dan, I'm not sure whether you have any update on paragraph 1 on that, the Regions Member of Parliament's and scrutiny of the Mayor in public session. I don't know whether there's any update to offer on that or whether you're doing it on the agenda.
I'll pick it up with the other item.
Okay, thank you. Do I have any other items, matters arising from page 5? And finally, any matters arising on page 6? So just on the work programme, Councillor Burrows proposed a deep dive could be undertaken to review the cost of the benefits of brownfield land projects, brownfield strategies affected and connected the region, and whether sites identified would have been developed without contribution from the CA. If we think that that is a worthy deep dive and is going to add some value to the scrutiny, I won't ask for any comment now. Have a think about it. We'll pick it up under the very final agenda item on the work programme, so that if we're going to do it, we can start getting that in motion, and we'll pick it up at the end. Okay, so that then moves us on to agenda item number 7. No, it doesn't. It moves us on to agenda verbal update from Dan. Sorry, Dan, on agenda item number 6. So if I can hand over to you, Sam.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's just a brief update, and I wanted to just have an item on the agenda because at the last meeting, the members may remember they considered or saw a report from myself, which was setting out the new scrutiny implications that were arising principally out of the deep devolution deal that was that had been submitted to the government and was going through the approvals process. I did say in that report that a report would come back to this meeting today on the scrutiny protocol, which, to remind members, is a government document that they're publishing, which is setting out their view of what good scrutiny looks like for authorities, principally combined authorities that have greater devolution powers. So the sort of mantra that with extra powers come extra accountability and oversight. The intention from the government is the scrutiny protocol will set out what that good scrutiny looks like, and then authorities, which will principally ourselves and Greater Manchester Combined Authority, can measure our current scrutiny arrangements with the government's view of what good scrutiny looks like. So there's work that's been going on over the summer. The reason the report was going to come to this meeting was because we were expecting the scrutiny protocol to be published by now. It was thought it would be over the summer months. The reason you haven't got a report is because it's been delayed. It's still being worked on, and the latest guidance from the civil services were expecting it to be published towards the end of September. So that will informally won't come before this committee till the next meeting. And it was to let you know that. What I can say though is that when it is published, and so we're expecting that in the next couple of weeks, most officers will start to look at how the West Midlands Combined Authority scrutiny arrangements measure up against it. And I think, as I said at the last meeting, we have been involved in the working group that's been developing that, so we have a somewhat reasonable idea of what the protocol will look like. And I'm confident to say in a public meeting that I think we will measure up well against that. And so, but that would be good to see that when it's finally agreed and published. And when that is, and as I say, that will be in the next couple of weeks, will involve members of this committee and also the Transport Delivery Scrutiny Committee. So you get sight of that immediately that it's published rather than writing of the governance before your next meeting. So just to let you know, the protocol is due out in the next couple of weeks. We'll then assess our current scrutiny arrangements against that protocol, that sort of gold standard as the government sees it, where we do need to enhance and develop and further strengthen the scrutiny arrangements. There'll be the discussion we'll have with members and the monitoring report to the next meeting. And then just picking up the comment from the earlier comment you made, Chair, about the MP's Q&A session with the mayor. So at the moment, it's another piece of work that the combined authority is involved with civil servants and Greater Manchester Combined Authority against it. There's very collaborative work going on in drawing up the terms of reference for those sessions. Obviously, there are new things. I mean, we're starting with a blank piece of paper, and there's a lot of work going on, which is currently going on and hasn't yet finalised yet, which is drawing up exactly the detail of how those meetings will work, sort of frequency and what will happen in individual meetings. So the very sort of detail of how the MP's Q&A sessions there will happen are currently work in progress. And again, when they are finalised, and as I said at the last meeting, it's not a scrutiny work stream that will directly affect this committee because it's MPs rather than yourselves, but it's absolutely right that you're aware of these and are fully cognizant of what's going on. Once they have been briefed and published, then we will share that with the committee as well, so you are aware of the detail of how the sessions will actually work.
Councillor Cabell.
Madam Chairman, I reckon there's about 32 MPs in our area. Will they all be invited here, or will there be a representation of areas or metropolitan boroughs, or what? How's it going to work?
Yeah, so I mean that detail is you know, the questions of that nature are what's being worked through, but certainly the intention is it's the region's MPs rather than representatives of the region's MPs. So yeah, it is a large number, and you know, there are practicalities around what would be a suitable venue, what would be a good room, and that sort of thing. If you've got, you know, 30 plus MPs, and no doubt there would be, you know, is your interest, etc. So those kind of very kind of nuts and bolts type of stuff is being worked through. But again, that will all be published in terms of reference. So exactly how they will work will be laid out, so everyone will know that. But certainly it's the intention. It's MPs rather than, you know, one MP representing each constituent authority or anything like that. It's the MPs of the region that the combined authority covers.
If I may, the political year is already a sort of a quarter over, isn't it, in a way? And they want 4 meetings a year. Surely these meetings ought to be pretty prompt and put in place very quickly, or the year has gone.
Yeah, we're working. I mean, this isn't just something we're doing. We're working with civil servants and you know, government departments on this, and you know, it's that balance between getting it right and making sure that the meetings, these Q&A sessions are effective and are worthwhile to members and are worthwhile to the purpose of scrutinising the combined authority and holding the mayor to account. At the same time, that's exactly your point. You know, you can't spend a year working this thing out, or the year will be over. So it is. I hasten to don't use the word imminent because it makes it sound like this afternoon, but people are working at pace to get this sorted. My sense is it will be in the autumn, the first meeting will take place, but that detail we're working through. But it as I say, it's with the government and the DLUC civil servants who are very much driving this. So it's at a pace that they are comfortable with as well, rather than us either going too fast or too slow.
The point I'm trying to make is trying to get 32 members in a room together when they're down in London 4 days a week to start with. It only gives you Friday. And a quarter of the year is already gone. If they want if we're entitled to 4 meetings with the MPs, with the mayor in a year, things have gone up pretty sharpish.
It's exactly that sort of practicality of when do you hold them, what day, what time of the day, that you'll get a good turnout from MPs rather than, you know, scheduling for the same time as questions to the Prime Minister, something like that. So it's those details that are working through, because to ensure that when the meetings, when the sessions are held, that they are effective and worthwhile. But you know, some of the points you're making, Councillor, are exactly the challenges we're working through, and when do you schedule this thing that will get the best turnout as possible.
So we have to wait for the paper to come out. Councillor McKee, quickly.
Yeah, just quickly, I mean, councillors, I mean, MPs are incredibly busy people, I should probably say, so trying to get them to do things is like trying to herd cats. So how many are you expecting to turn up of the 32?
Well, I mean, I don't know, it's the short answer, of course, but clearly, you know, if two turned up, then you know, the process has failed. So it needs now. Will every single one turn up to every single session? No, I think we can all probably assume that. But there needs, you know, I'd equate similar to this committee. You know, you need a cohort and a substantial cohort of people to turn up to make these things worthwhile. And so that challenge, knowing the MP's diaries and all of the, you know, myriad of other things that they're doing, and this is something else. So we've got to organise these things when they can actually make it, because if you know, taken to extreme, if the mayor's sitting there in front of nobody, then it's a complete waste of time. So it's that sort of thing. And I don't think anyone thinks it will be easy, but that's what we're working in. So in terms of reference, we'll set that out, and you know, there is the government again recognised there's an element of, you know, let's hold one or two, do they need tweaking on the right day, and you know, there'll be an element of refining these things, but there are clever people trying to work it all out.
Thank you. So watch this space really on that, I guess. So it moves us on to item 7 and the Affordable Homes Programme. So I'm going to hand over to Rob Lamond and Deborah Casey from Homes England. But the Scrutiny Committee is recommended to note the progress following the announcement of the devolution deal, specifically on the joint working of the Homes England and WMCA teams relating to the Affordable Homes Programme. And note that ongoing engagement with local authorities and other partners is ongoing, and the ONS committee members are encouraged to contribute to this and provide links where necessary into relevant stakeholders. So hand over to yourself, Rob.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, everybody. So as you've noted, Chair, the purpose of this report is to update the committee on those points. Just a bit of background and context. So the devolution deal agreed in March this year set out a kind of two-stage approach to the Affordable Homes Programme in the region in future. So just to note, the Affordable Homes Programme is the government's national programme for affordable homes funding, run by Homes England across England, apart from within the Greater London Authority area. The first and current phase of this pilot approach to the devolution deal is between now and 2026, which is the current programme that is in existence as it stands. And the first part of this devolution deal requirement is for the Combined Authority and its partners to work closely with Homes England over the deployment of that programme funding in the region, and specifically to look to invest a considerable amount of money from 200 million up to 400 million in the region through AHP funds between now and 2026. So a clear target and a clear ambition set to the region to deliver that additional investment into the region and deliver more affordable homes. The second phase is much more about further devolution to the region for the next or successor programme, the Affordable Homes Programme, post the current programme running up to 2026. So how will the region look to see that programme developed and delivered within the West Midlands, and what were the parameters or criteria within the existing programme that we might look to amend or change depending on local need and local ambitions. So a twin track approach to the overall devolution process. So just in terms of the current steps that are taken, I'm really pleased to have Deborah with me today, who's working very closely with my team, and we've set up a joint project team between the Combined Authority and Homes England to take this work forward. we're working on a joint pipeline process where the identified schemes that come through the Homes England pipeline as it currently stands out, those that we are aware of at the combined authority through our engagement both with the market and with local authorities. They're looking to identify any other opportunities within that programme and also looking at what there are other flexibilities within either our funding or the Homes England's funding to deliver more affordable homes on those schemes. The project team are working through the legal governance and other requirements of that programme in the current phase and also looking to see where those options might be for the future. We're also embarked on quite a significant amount of engagement both with local authority colleagues, housing association partners and other parts of the affordable homes sector to both assure them that this isn't necessarily going to add additional delay or any differences into how the programme currently gets delivered and the speed in which schemes can get approved through the Homes England process, but really looking to see if there might be additional opportunities in the future as well. And we're talking to the Housing Association Partnership on a frequent basis. We've got a meeting with the chief execs and others of that group next week, and we've also got West Business Housing Association Partnership Board tomorrow that we're speaking at. And also looking at other opportunities through different types of providers. So Arms House Association, which was noted as part of the Scrutiny review a couple of years ago, has been a potential collaboration, and other groups, including the Church of England, around their property in the region. So a significant amount of work ongoing there, Chair. And then just to add the final point that I think is really significant move since we last spoke at Scrutiny is that the overall Homes England programme nationally now has more flexibility within it to deliver estate regeneration. So as alongside additional new homes, there is potential for estate regeneration opportunities now, which can now be looked at for investment through the Affordable Homes programme, and working with Deb and others on that in terms of the options and the opportunities in the region for particular areas that may have been in need of investment for some time, but due to the constraints around the Affordable Homes programme in the past, we haven't been able to deliver. That now gives us much more opportunity to do that in the future. So, as you mentioned, in terms of the recommendations, Chair, there's a real hopefully call out through the Scrutiny Committee today to local authority partners and others to engage with this process as we take it forward. We're in constant dialogue with the region teams throughout the region and also through the housing delivery teams, but if there's other parts that we're not reaching, it'd be really great for us to be able to do that through this.
Deborah, is there anything from a Homes England perspective you'd like to add?
I think Rob's done a great job of covering it there, and just to reiterate, it's very much in short term think about as to what you might like the programme to look like going forward. Now, where it's got a very clear shared aim and delivering more affordable housing in this geography, and we're exploring every avenue we can to try and get some early delivery and success.
Okay, thank you. Can I ask you, one minute to turn you?
That's it. Thank you. I've got a couple of people indicating they want to speak, but I'd just like to very quickly pick up, and I think it's a really, really critical point, is the estate regeneration. Because we often focus on, and rightly so, we focus on the delivery of new homes, but I'd like you to keep us appraised really on that, Rob, and how that develops, and some practical examples of where local authorities are seeking to work with you to actually regenerate some of the estates, which, you know, in my ward particularly, you know, I've got some estates crying out for regeneration, as I'm sure we all have. So if you could keep us appraised on that as we move through the process, please. So I've got Councillor Lumby first.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I know the second phase is a while away, 2026, but I know that there's no funding to the combined authority to actually run it and staff it of the issues. And however, they'll have responsibility for local investment and spend, and then conversely, the day-to-day running will still be Homes England. It just seems a little bit vague, and who's going to end up with responsibility, and it's going to cost.
I think that's a very valid point in terms of the post 2026, and that has yet to be worked out. So colleagues in the combined authority are working closely with central government at the moment around the single settlement, how funding will come to the region in future, and the 2026 programme could potentially form part of that single settlement, and that is then delivered within that programme. In terms of the existing programme as it's currently being worked, as you were quite rightly saying, that's currently still delivered by Homes England with input from us within the combined authority within existing resources that currently stands to change to our budget either at this present time. Which is still work in progress, I think.
Thanks. I think it's worth noting those, picking up those comments though, to note for, the future in terms of 2026. Thank you, Councillor Lumby. Councillor Akhtar?
Thank you, Chair. I would like to know, although the post talk about the affordable housing, and my understanding is affordable and social housing is two different things. When it comes to the rent, affordable means 80% of the market rent. But then compared with social housing, where the rent is far lower than affordable housing. So I think it does look like that affordable housing is a preferred method of delivering the council housing, or what we call it social housing. And so what we are actually looking at, I mean, how many units we're looking for social in there? If for example we deliver 3,000-4,000 affordable house in our region in a year, what proportion that would be the social housing? And because I've seen, I sit in the planning committee for a long time in Coventry. We've seen the governments and the social housing providers are moving away from affordable housing. Even Home England, that's that preferred method is affordable. And to be honest, affordable, what affordable for me is, it might not be for the chair that affordable. So it's quite, what I say is misleading that term is, to be honest, but we are where we are. I would like to know what is about social housing, how many units we are looking to build in that affordable. Thank you, Chair.
I'm happy to just pick this and just clarify. The Affordable Homes Programme from the Homes England perspective covers all those tenures that you just mentioned. I completely agree with you at affordable levels. People might think that's 80%, but the Affordable Homes Programme covers the social rent, an affordable rent, a shared ownership product, and a rent to buy product. So when we're talking about the delivery of affordable housing through the Affordable Homes Programme, we're talking about the delivery of all those different tenures. And there has been a big push recently to get more social rent that's come directly down from the government and is being pushed through Homes England. So I am aware at the start of this programme, there was very limited areas which could bid in to deliver social rent. Everyone could deliver affordable rent, but only certain places could deliver social rent. Now everywhere can deliver social rent. I mean, Coventry was always on that list, so Coventry's always been able to deliver social rent. And we encourage that, and the grant levels are representative of the amount of funding that needs to go in to deliver a social rent there. I can't answer how many you'd be aiming for or what your tenure mix you might want to see going forward. I think that's something for you to think about. Benefits of devolution, I suppose, and having that knowledge. But certainly in this context, affordable housing covers different types of tenure.
Councillor Marshall?
Thank you, Chair. I was interested to know, obviously, trying to spend 200 million in 2.5 years is quite a lot, even with inflation. 400 million is even harder. Obviously, you want to spend this money and maximise it. How much have we actually identified already? How many sites? And in comparison to the actual full spend, how much more have we still got to go out there and find sites that we can develop?
That's the nub of the work really at the moment, to be fair, Councillor, so I think that's a really good point. So we're very much looking at identifying both what's in the existing Homes England delivery pipeline prior to the for instance, the announcement, and then obviously where the other opportunities are. I think probably from a kind of initial phase, it's worth thinking about the 200 million as an investment target. That's the financial figure, but it's also about demonstrating the impact. So we're looking at how quickly it's quicker as well. So is there an opportunity there for brownfield funds that the combined authority currently delivers. The upgrading schemes forward that would then also receive affordable homes program funding in due course. So how do we accelerate things through? I can't give you an exact figure at the moment in terms of the pipeline because it's constantly changing. But I do think it's worth saying that we've identified already that there's a significant sum towards that 200 million initial target. 400 million, as I say, is a really big ask. However, I think it's fair to say that the estate regeneration opportunities to see where we might be able to get that funding as well. So estate regeneration classically is quite, it's a long-term, considerably long phases of investment. If we can look to identify some of those opportunities in the current programme, we'll get us much closer to that point. I think just on the kind of data point that you mentioned earlier, Chair, today, as we work through this, there's certain elements of commercial confidentiality that we have to keep. I think where we can, we will bring updates to the committee in future that gives us more clarity on those kind of profiles towards those targets.
Yeah, and I guess it's so.
I was going to say, could I come back in? Okay. And coming back on that, how realistic is it that we're going to be able to spend this money in the 2.5 years, thinking as well of how this will affect the building sector and how busy the building sector is already with HS2 and other works going on, how much we're going to then flood the market and cause problems for ourselves by having too much going on too quickly.
Again, it's a very valid point. I think in terms of the market and market delivery at the moment, I think there's potentially an opportunity for affordable homes to be the lead, where perhaps the private sector is beginning to look at holding back into investment with cost of living and various other impacts on their delivery in future. So this might be actually a counter-cyclical investment. And that generally has been the case in previous terms where the market development has gone into a bit of a regression or decline. Affordable homes programs don't work out because it's counter-cyclical. So we take on point the comment about HS2 and other things in terms of the skills and opportunities available, and that's why we're also doing work that the combined authority and other partners looking at how we fill those skills gaps, that long-term skills pipeline in the future as well. And that's really valid points that we're really working towards.
Thank you.
Councillor McKee.
Yeah, thanks very much. And I was really interested in what you were saying there about the estates. Do you want to knock this off? And what you were saying about the estate regeneration, and would you be able to step in? Because I think Ladywood and Birmingham in the top 10% of disadvantage towards massive redevelopment going on there, partnership with council and Berkeley Homes, but it's only 10%. Sorry, it's only 16% of affordable homes going into that development. The Athletes Village again in Birmingham, including the extra care village, there's only 22% affordable homes going in there. And I was reading this report and then looking at those figures that I knew, and I'm just wondering how is this going to stack up, and in things like that, would you step in and buy some of those homes from Berkeley Homes or something, or how would this work to get the numbers that we want to hear when you've got 10-year redevelopment program of Ladywood with only 16% affordable homes on there? I'm just not quite sure how we're going to hit these numbers.
I'll comment on those points on last step, just to cover the 10-year bit. So in terms of the Ladywood as a particular opportunity and others within the region, so we're already in quite advanced conversations with the relevant partners on some of those. So Combined Authority Homes England and Birmingham City Council had a joint meeting on Ladywood the week before last to go through some of those options, and obviously it's the early stages of that kind of whole process, but how do we look at potentially blending the funding from different areas, including some of our upfront brownfield remediation funds alongside affordable homes program funding in the future. I'm just going to devil the buying property because that's not fundamentally how the affordable homes program will work, so it's probably worth just thinking about.
And that's fine. So just to understand, Rob was saying, we are involved in these large regeneration schemes. We have some input at various different levels. From Homes England, I'm not over the detail of that. Understanding is that we're going back. There's no drop in affordable to offer there before, although I take it for 15% sounding low. And I suppose your question is if you want to see that higher, and if you want to see that 35%. Often on these, there's a real balance in terms of placemaking tenure. So that can be more than a sort of a financial situation to consider when they're looking at what is what it needs to return to get the investment in the first place, which might not be the case with Labour. But essentially, the Affordable Homes Programme does allow for partners to get the funding and then go and buy properties that were previously meant for the open market, and that frequently, and it does happen on a downturn when you to increase the number of affordable. So that as a process isn't impossible, it's something that happens all the time. So even on large sites where the deals weren't already being done, that doesn't mean that that is the only affordable that can ever go on. There is still an option afterwards for further conversion of affordable if it's what's right for the area, if the developer wants to sell them, if there is a willing partner who wants to purchase.
I'll be quick. Yeah, I mean, when it came to cabinet, I think they did when they said that there was the same number of affordable homes on there. What it was the deal with Berkeley Homes is that the density is not that great at the moment. They're allowing Berkeley Homes to go on there, and then they're going to really make it a lot denser. They're not taking any of the affordable homes out, so therefore it is true to say that it stays the same. But by massively making it a lot more dense, you know, there's only of the new build, there's only 16% more going in there. So really, you know, it is a drop. But I was just intrigued that Berkeley Homes came back when pressured on this to say, oh, of course, we're willing to sell houses for people who want to make them affordable. But I haven't yet found anyone who's willing to step in and buy these houses to make them affordable. So I mean, because we're talking about estate regeneration here, and as I say, Ladywood in the top 10% of you know, deprived estates. And this is the very sort of area that needs to be developed with affordable homes. And I just don't think it's going to happen. You know, I'm not one for this committee in some ways, but I could just, when you said that there, it just set the light bulb off in my head. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I mean, not on the specifics of this particular, but just generally, it does happen and it can happen as a mechanism. So I don't know if it will happen at Ladywood. Just to answer your question, these possibilities does happen that RP partners come in and buy fully built housing and convert them to affordable. Obviously, there's planning implications to consider that. It's something that can be done and can be achieved.
If I could just add to that, Chair, that's okay. I think that's precisely the kind of thing where we're looking to broker those conversations, but where we're aware of them, where there's opportunity for more housing association investment through funds to bring that type of percentage back. So that's exactly what these conversations that we're having and further engagement with the rest of the sector is aiming to do. So it's a really good example.
Thank you. I've got 3 people indicating they want to speak. I'm going to move on after Amanda has spoken because we've still got another 2 housing papers to get through. So Councillor Burrows next.
Thank you, Chair. I'm from Solihull Borough. We've got a target 40% on most of our greenfield sites, of which there is quite a lot. Are you funding those 40%, or are you trying to find additional on top of that 40% across the region? I mean, are your funds going to help with that 40% that is within the Solihull plan, or is this additional stuff on top? I hope it's the latter.
So when it comes to the affordable homes, if the affordable homes are what's required within Section 106 through planning, as in development contribution, then they're not eligible for affordable homes programme funding because that's what we're expecting the developer to contribute. Anything above that is fundable, and that's why we're looking to stretch the numbers and its relevance up to the levels that you want to see.
Councillor Waters.
Good morning. Now, my question actually goes along with Councillor Akhtar's. The definition of affordable. Now, buy-to-lets are actually in the category of affordable, and not everybody can afford a buy-to-let. It's actually 20, the actual figure is 20% of all new builds that have to be allocated to buy-to-lets, to social rather than buy-to-lets and affordable, whatever you want to call it, and the ones that the actual builders actually sell off as for sale. Now, until it's actually made as the figure is higher, we are never going to make headway on the lists that actually have, like Walsall, 14,000 people are waiting to be rehoused. So at the end of the day, until these figures are altered, because not everyone, as I've just said, can afford buy-to-let. The social market, because they're on benefits, they are not going to get a mortgage. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Waters. Does anybody want to pick up any response to that?
If I could, Chair, just briefly, I think we've been over the kind of what does affordability mean a few times in this committee, and I think it's worth us recirculating the paper we did a little while ago that's got the national definition and various parameters of that. So we'll do that after this committee. And then on the kind of the wider, I suppose the kind of conceptual question of what is affordable, what does it mean, regardless of the national definition, maybe we pick that up under the next item around the strategy for the future.
Yep, that's fine. Thank you very much. Amanda.
Thank you, Chair. Just referencing 5.2 in the report around delivery, and I was just wondering in terms of the system, Rob, because obviously it's quite broad in terms of delivery, from landowners sitting on sites that they're not willing to release, to planning and processes there, to other aspects, right to haven't got enough people to actually deliver the homes that are needed. And my question is, has the CA got good sight across the system in terms of ability to deliver?
I think we have good sight between us collectively, but I think it's worth us bringing that collective sight in one of the so that's definitely the point around just talking to planning colleagues, talking to housing delivery colleagues, talking to regeneration colleagues across the sector and across the region. They're all going to be facing different circumstances and different requirements. So I think that collective view is there, but we need to bring it together in a more kind of coherent and cohesive way. And again, back to the scrutiny review of 18 months or so ago, that was one of the key recommendations, really, just having we bring the whole overview to the whole system, because at the moment the system is quite fragmented despite best efforts. So excuse me, how do we address that and do that in the future? I think the Trailblazer deal is part of that, but the wider part is again, and I'm not trying to pass the ball to the next item, but the next item around the overall strategies is where we're heading.
Thank you. And just on the item number 2, where we on the recommendations, could I just ask you, Rob, to perhaps circulate a briefing note to members of the committee about what you're actually looking for, and when you talk about other partners and stakeholders, who is it you're referring to, and how the committee can contribute to that in their local authorities? Thank you. So we'll move on to the next item now, which is item number 8, and the affordable housing supply strategy. Obviously, we've already touched on some of that, but over to yourself.
Thank you, Chair. And I should say I've kind of previewed this a little bit, so apologies for jumping around a little bit, but this is an update to the committee based on a previous conversation that we had earlier in the year, that we were looking to bring forward an affordable housing supply strategy in future. Just to note really that because it's a devolution deal and the implications of the work that's been going into the implementation of that, that housing supply strategy has been kind of held back a little more, went through some of the detail. However, I think the points that have been raised already in the conversation on the previous item are really valid around how do we bring across this overall view and coherent view of the system as a whole, where some of the opportunities are, where some of the current barriers are and challenges are there, and what we can do differently, particularly thinking about post 2026 and how we move towards that new programme, successor programme. What are the things that the region wants to see within that strategy that we bring forward? So whilst the work has been on pause a little, that's not to say that the kind of thinking or the overview isn't currently working through the system. We've had conversations at this committee previously. We've also talked frequently through Housing and Land Delivery Board, through the Homelessness Task Force, and through other groups and task forces that the combined authorities involved with about what are some of those options and what are the things that we'd look to do. Building on some of the work that's already happened. So, as you know, all of our current investments secure more than 20% affordable homes on through our own combined authority grant funding. Are there other opportunities for us to look at how that might work differently in the future? Other work around, particularly around the definition pieces, Council Waters and others that picked up today around what is the national definition, what does that mean in terms of the regional or local need? Are there other things that we would like to see either within the definition as a whole or things that we would like to propose back to government as part of long-term proposals around actually affordability means much more than what you pay for the initial purchase price or rental price. Affordability in its widest sense. So how expensive is it to live in a particular area? How expensive are energy bills? How expensive is it to transport in that particular area? So it's a huge and potentially very broad strategy, and it's how do we focus that in, get the right voices in the room and listen to all of those voices and bring them together coherently. That is the kind of objective of this next piece of work. So in terms of the next steps, we're now commissioning this strategy to be developed. We're instigating, as I've said, kind of cross group and various other kind of forums for us to be able to take this conversation out. And again, as per the last item, Chair, really a call through the committee today to get the right people and the right voices from the local authorities and your local areas. So I think it's important to talk to community groups and others on this. It's not just about the people we hear frequently, it's about the people we don't necessarily hear all that frequently. So how do we get the real detail there? So that's the kind of update on the development of the strategy and where we are. And clearly when we've got a draft strategy, we'll bring that back to this committee for further views as well. But I'd like to see it as an ongoing development rather than a set piece. Here's a paper for you to.
Thank you. And I think, again, when you put together that briefing note on the previous item, if you can include in that how people feed that information through to the CA, who do they feed it through to? Because we need to be aware of that. So I've got Councillor Tennant followed by Councillor Marshall.
Thanks. I've got a few questions. They do kind of cut across the free housing reports a little bit. The first, we've got 3 reports on delivering affordable housing in front of us. There's no numbers for a target of how many we're trying to build in any of these 3 reports. And even if it's not exact number, kind of to allow us, as we come back to this over the next few years, to benchmark are we delivering, it'd be useful to have an idea of how many houses does the region need, how many is it target the CA is trying to unlock, and also quite useful, how many do the local authorities need to be looking at doing stuff as well. So that's kind of the first point. The second, obviously, we've got 7 local authorities, I don't know how many constituent members, all with different levels of housing need and available land. What work is being done to ensure that every local authority is getting some kind of investment to, obviously CA can't meet their entire need, but that the local authorities that have higher need for more housing are kind of getting more support, and ensuring that we're not just going for the easy, cheapest bits of land, which may actually be right on the edge of the CA and not helping some of those Stanwells, Birminghams in the middle. I don't know if that's right or not, but kind of is work being done to ensure that's taking place. And the third and final one is around, you mentioned that affordable housing isn't just about the cost of the house, obviously all the other, so say costs, heating and transport and all of that. We talked in a previous meeting about transport links, and I don't want to step on the toes of our colleagues in Transport ONS, but the transport teams are involved in all this to ensure that as we build new trams, these big routes, they're unlocking new bits of land for people. So that's something they bought, but yeah, that's what I've got.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll try and take each of those in turn. So in terms of targets for areas, I think that's a really valid point, and part of the crucial part of the evidence for this strategy will be what are the numbers as they currently stand that we think we need to deliver in the future. Now, as with all of these things, that is a movable feast, so that will change as time goes on, but I think you might have a benchmark basis on, and that will be part of this process to set those benchmarks. In terms of the local authority needs and how those might be addressed, so again, it's entirely up to each local authority in terms of how they set their own housing targets and their own housing needs, but how we work as a combined authority with housing as well in this joint development meetings is very much about what are the local authority priorities for investment and how can they come through. So, as you quite rightly say, focusing on the key priorities that local authorities want to deliver, either through their own delivery or through other partners, and how are those identified. So, as a combined authority, we have monthly to 6 weekly meetings with the local authority in terms of their priority pipeline for schemes. And since March and since the implementation of the deal, we're very much looking at how do we make sure that the Affordable Homes programme kind of investment are included in that to make sure that nothing gets missed in the cracks. But also then this ongoing engagement that I mentioned in terms of working up the strategy and work on the programme will hopefully identify some of those as well. So there's a kind of multi-layered effect, but very much again open to all areas being flagged for us to look into. So there's areas that the local authority or obviously think aren't necessarily getting the attention they might need for some of the schemes, and please flag those up, and we can pick those up with our colleagues on the development side. And then finally on the wider links bit, absolutely transport are very much the Transport for West Midlands very much involved in kind of the weekly and monthly thinking on how we develop this work. They also put into all of our investment cases in terms of proximity to local transport, public transport networks and such like in terms of our existing investments, and that will continue. But the links between the transport strategy and the housing strategy are absolutely necessary.
Thank you, Councillor Marshall.
Thank you, Chair. I'm really pleased to see in this report several mentions to zero carbon homes. I think that's absolutely right, that we should be making sure that having a well insulated property is also affordable. It's not something just for people who can afford that extra cost. So thank you for that. What I haven't seen in this though is a mention to biodiversity gains when we're developing areas, and I'd like to see a section on that so that we can make sure we're not just delivering zero carbon, but also nice, beautiful green spaces, which will actually also benefit the natural world as well as our residents.
Thank you, Councillor. Noted. I will make sure that we include that in the conversation and in the
Useful point there. Thank you, Councillor Marshall. Councillor Akhtar.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I wholeheartedly support this strategy. We all know that we are in the midst of a national housing crisis, and working together with the stakeholders and local authorities and other stakeholders, I think that is the best way forward to tackle this problem. I always raise the issue with this national housing. We all know that buy to let is a big problem. Sorry, buy to buy is the big problem when it comes to maintain the housing stock. We've seen we sold our stock for pennies, and 2 years later, the same housing come to market, people make a lot of money. I know the government's intention is to help people to go to the housing ladder, but that is not the right way. And I know it's not the Home England or officers in the West Midlands Combined Authority, but I think through the mayor and the other politicians, we should make a case to the government that we should not sell our housing stock at pennies. But if we do, ensure the housing stock stays with those people. We don't sell enough to few years, make money. And we are losing houses we've seen in our own city. People buy a house and then a few years later, they sell the house and make money. So that is my point. I know it's not your demand, but I think we should flag that issue another chance. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Akhtar. I think it's more of a statement rather than for comment. So I think the report has just asked us to note the progress which we have done, and we've obviously picked up a few points that will be included in the minutes that will come out for inclusion within the strategy. And I think the issues around KPIs and benchmarking are absolutely critical, because when we come on to a further item on the agenda around performance reporting against business deliverables, it's really difficult if we haven't got benchmarks to be able to work with. So thank you for that. And your final paper, Rob, on the affordable housing pilot.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies for hogging the agenda. So again, this is an update report based on previous reports that have come to this committee around a proposal around joint working really between the Combined Authority and the local partners to deliver all of those affordable homes that we've been talking about today. So very much based on a kind of proposal that's come from the sector itself, from the West Midlands Housing Association Partnership. There's a broader umbrella group of the housing associations that are working in our region. That One House Collective has been looking at various different options for how they can work with the Combined Authority and other local partners to deliver more homes beyond those within their existing business plans, so additional new affordable homes alongside those they've already set out. As the committee will have heard before, but I appreciate there's new members here, this is very much an opportunity to look at a pilot proposal from the RPs and the housing associations within the kind of smaller group, five of the larger housing associations in the region have looked to combine to bring forward a potential opportunity or opportunities in the future. And that's very much based on an attempt to sort of pilot and test out some of the approaches we've talked about and have been talked about previously, and particularly just referring back to your point, Chair, in the updates to the minutes, looking at how potentially modular or other off-site construction can be identified as part of this process going forward, and also various other elements around some of the wider benefits that have been mentioned as well, around local supply chains, zero carbon, and we haven't got biodiversity net gain in here at the moment, but I'll definitely pick that up in the future. So just to update, really, the five RPs are continuing to work with us on a potential opportunity within the region, very much looking to maximise the benefits and bring forward a scheme or schemes that deliver 100% affordable homes, so not just a proportion of the homes on those sites, but 100% affordable, to really demonstrate the benefit and opportunities of delivering this way. As the paper says, that there is kind of implications or relevance here in terms of the devolution deal and how it fits with the affordable homes programme in future, and very much seen as an opportunity for us to look at how different ways of working might progress post 2026 as well. We're continuing in section 5 of the progress to date, the next steps. We're continuing to work with the Housing Association group on this process, working through our assurance framework and the due diligence necessary in Combined Authority to bring this forward, and continuing through that due diligence process. And we're hoping to bring forward a case for approval in the future if possible, subject to that due diligence being agreed. So there's still quite some work to go through in terms of the overall legal and other governance arrangements here. Important to just note, this does not involve the Combined Authority in a delivery vehicle or a joint venture. It's very much looking at disposal of land for delivery of affordable homes at this stage. So it's not planned a joint venture, and that's not part of any of the recommendations of this report. But also just to note that we will bring any further business case plans through this committee.
Thanks. I think just a general comment from me, having been on the committee now for some years, and obviously this paper has come a number of times. It feels to me that the pace of movement has been really slow. And I just wondered if there's a comment on that, Rob, in terms of have there been blockers to the development of it? Where are the stumbling points? Because I can't remember whether it was 2018 or 19 it first came to committee. It's one of the two. So this has obviously been on the agenda now for some time without any significant progress.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it was 2019, I believe, and that proposal at that stage was very much around a joint venture proposal. So the proposals from the RP group at that point were very much about a kind of joint vehicle being established between the combined authority and the partners. As we work through that proposal, I think it's fair to say that it was agreed from all parties that as we work through the kind of options and the opportunities there, that wasn't the right model at this time. So we have been back through the process, as you rightly say, a number of times to find potential opportunities to take this forward. That has taken some time. I think it's fair to say that's because we're very keen to make sure we get this right and not rush it through, but also accept the facts around this and accept the comments around this. I think the other thing that's important to note here is that we're doing this as a pilot, so it is a learning opportunity, but it also means it's something that we as a combined authority haven't done in the past. So we're learning as we go along, and therefore we are making sure that we are watertight on all of the applications then as we go through it. So that's part of the process.
And just very quickly before I bring Councillor Burrows in, is there an assurance that the delivery of modular builds is on the agenda from the housing association group?
So from the combined authorities perspective, our objectives for the delivery of this proposal would include meeting our requirements for off-site AMC delivery. That will be one of the key criteria we'd be seeking. Obviously, that agreement hasn't been made with the LPs at this stage, so I can't guarantee it, but I can say that in the negotiations up to this point, there is a recognition of that and a willingness to look to use a local supplier of that type of modular construction subject to agreeing the disposal of schemes. So they would be looking to bring that forward in their current proposals.
Do we have any time frames that we're looking at for further, for movement on this, so we actually get some firm proposals put forward, please?
So currently working through that revised timeframe at the moment, Chair, and we're hoping to get some clarity over the next stages this calendar year, whether that's a group agreement disposal or not the agreement disposal, the agreement to move towards that process, or whether we, as you say, decide this isn't the right thing for us to take forward.
Thank you. And Councillor Burrows?
Thank you, Chair. Can I just double check my understanding of this? Basically, you're thinking of selling off authority homes below market rates in order to foster the creation of additional affordable homes. Is that what the proposal is?
The point around below market rates isn't. So what we're looking to do is we will have our land value, and if we dispose of the site, that value will be met. Maybe final parties are looking to dispose of it. So we wouldn't be selling the land at below the market rate, as you say, we can sell that at market valuation.
I find that intriguing, given the biggest barrier to affordable homes is actually the price of the land, not the price of the buildings. But there we go. Second thing is, I did actually go on the factory tour. They don't actually build houses. What they do is they make wall panels. I found that intriguing. I found it really worrying that they were making those kneeling on the floor because they don't have the right kit. And the activity levels, I'm an ex-manufacturing guy in building products, the activity levels were astoundingly low. About 20% of the guys are actually doing productive work at any moment in time. It was not an operation, I would say, that I would actually wish to bet my project on. Now, I know that is a highly negative comment, but I spent a lot of time in component factories, and I saw nothing like that. I just wondered whether the combined authority had actually gone and visited any overseas factories in Germany and Scandinavia to actually have a look at how they do it and the process. Because I don't understand why we want to go down modular when the guy tells us, well, our prices will be the same as the traditional methods. Why would you take the risk? Especially when he also said was the life of these products is 60 years. Now, I happen to live in a brick-built cottage, which was built 200 years ago, and there are quite a few of those knocking around my area. 60 years is nothing. We're not even going to mortgage these days on a building that's going to last 60 years. So I would be very careful
It's a statement rather than a question.
Okay. Councillor Marshall?
Thank you. With the fact that we're not going to have much control over this, I'd like some reassurances of our oversight in terms of us, this is a pilot, we want to have learnings. What are the requirements of the people we're working with to report back? And can we make sure we're getting the reports that we want to see rather than the reports they want to see that might benefit them rather than benefit us? And we want to have open and transparent reporting.
And just to be clear, we're not at the stage of agreeing this proposal anyway, so we don't have any reports to be back on that at this stage, but we can certainly look at what those report requirements will be as part of this committee and as part of the reporting, so that we can bring them back to get them subject to due course, because we're not at that stage as yet. But if that was to be the process, we would look at how is this reporting go through the kind of corporate
Thank you. Councillor Waters? Councillor Waters?
Sorry, I know I've took my mic off. Along with my colleagues' comment about going to visit local homes in Aldridge. The reason why a lot of the operation was being done on the floor, they've got one machine that actually does the process that they work on, and that was out of operation. So that was while they was using the floor. And the one thing, well, it's a question, this one is, could we actually have a visit to actually see some of these homes they've actually built, to actually see the quality of them when they're actually done, the standard and what have you, so as we can actually see whether they are worth what's the name? Because the fact is, these are a lot quicker to build, and with the situation we've got with housing, we need to be getting houses up there. And what was actually pointed out as well was local housing group has actually just come forward to ask them if they can actually use their system, their module system, on garage sites. Now, I know in the West Midlands there's a lot of garage sites that are unused and need redeveloping. And this is a very quick way and practical way of actually moving forward with these garage sites. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Waters. I think from memory, there are modular developments in pretty much all of our local authorities across the region. So what I might ask Lindsay to do is to work with a representative of each of the local authorities to set something up for the representative of that authority, rather than trying to get everybody together in one place to go out and see a development, because that was quite tricky to do. But we'll pick that up offline, Vera. I've got Councillor McKee.
Yeah, thanks very much. I used to be in the timber trade before I came to do this, and modular building was something that certainly they were pushing a lot to do. Timber frame is the most popular form of modular building, etc., and things like that. And the speed that you can build it with is fantastic, and of course the quality of building something in a factory is often far superior than you can do it on site. But I think the thing that always holds it back is just the amount of, when you try to scale it up to build it across the country, is obviously the skilled trades that are available to obviously assemble it on site, even though it's a lot quicker, etc. So I'm really keen about it, and obviously with the mention of it there, I found sort of was quite intrigued. But yeah, it's just a question of whether you can get the people and the skills to get it on site. Just on the 60-year thing, I don't know if it's the same thing, but certainly when we used to do engineered floor joists and things like that, that used to come with a 65-year guarantee, because that was then the legal definition of a lifetime guarantee. It was 65 years. It didn't mean it was going to fail after 65 years. It just meant that that's what the definition of a lifetime guarantee is. So I don't know if that applies to in this case then. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't know either, so thank you for your comments. I've got finally Councillor Akhtar.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to know the size of the land WMCA owns and location where the land is and how big the land will be.
I think I'll check with colleagues on this, but I think at the moment we're unable to kind of give the specific site information because the confidentiality negotiations are ongoing, but we do have kind of register of our assets if it's helpful. It's going to see what assets come on. It's probably identified.
Okay, thanks everybody for your comments on the 3 papers, and thank you Rob and Deborah for your time this morning. All of the comments will be picked up and noted, and look forward to your briefing notes as well, please, Rob, on those. Okay, that moves us on to item 10 and performance reporting against annual business plan deliverables. We've got Jazz in the room and Fiona online to talk us through this paper. This is the first time that this has ever come to scrutiny, and the proposal is that we will have this report twice a year. It will be in a different cycle from next year, but the plan would be that it would come to July's meeting and January's meetings. So, Jazz, are you taking the paper in the room?
Yeah.
Okay, so over to yourself.
Cheers, Chair, thank you. So the aim of the performance reporting against the annual business plan paper is to provide members with an overview of how the annual business plan is monitored and how the performance will be shared with you on a bi-yearly basis. This will provide assurance of executive board responses and the action taken, particularly if there's been some slippage or deteriorating performance. Before I go into the actual performance section of the report itself, I think it's quite useful to provide some context around the annual business plan process. So we've had 2 annual business plans. They're a yearly document, and the process will start again in September. This is vital to achieve that golden thread approach, where WMCA aims and objectives are linked to directorate plans and team plans, right the way through to individual performance management goals of employees across the organisation. So you can see that golden thread right from the top going all the way down. So the annual business plan sets out all the activity delivered for that particular year. And then activity is measured through high-level deliverables, which are essentially performance indicators. These are reported to the executive board on a monthly basis through a visually rich Power BI dashboard, and this triangulates performance, financial information, along with strategic risk information. There's also an exception report that provides HLD performance based on red and amber HLDs. And sitting underneath each HLD is a set of SMART milestones, which shows the key activities that are required to deliver on that HLD. These milestones can also be weighted dependent on the importance of the particular activity in question. So that information is then aggregated to provide an overall performance of that particular HLD. So the intention is to report this information to members here twice yearly, and this will provide assurance of executive board responses and the actions taken, as I mentioned earlier, along any slippage. The second report will be provided in January, and there may be more red and amber HLD indicators at that time, and more information to report, because essentially the HLDs are calculated on a cumulative basis. So towards the end of the year, you'll have more data and information to report on. So with that in mind, I'll look at July's performance, which shows there are 7 red and amber HLDs, and 1 red HLD is at risk, which is the 1 red HLD. So this HLD is HLD 21, establishing Life Chances Commission, which looks at better understanding the barriers for young people in the region and what targeted initiatives we can develop to mitigate that.
So this is a mayoral commitment, and whether this will be progressed will be decided by the mayor in a meeting that may have already been taking place in August. The remaining 6 HLDs are amber and are expected to be back on track in the coming months based on the commentary provided by HLD owners. So I've provided an overview of the annual business plan and how often we'll report back to this committee, but also provided you a brief summary of the actual performance to date. Thank you for your time. Any questions?
Thanks. Fiona, is there anything additional that you want to add to that presentation?
Nothing I'd like to add to that, Chair. As Jaspal said, this is primarily to give Overview and Scrutiny Committee some assurance that our executive directors are reviewing, monitoring and managing those risks around performance. But happy for questions.
Thank you. I've got Laura who'd like to comment as well.
Just to say how important this is. This is our annual business plan. This is what we take through the board. It's what we set out what we're going to do. It's what we measure our progress against, and it comes to us monthly at our exec meeting. We get updated by the team on activity. We check the work against milestones. So I just really want to highlight how important this is, which is why it's here, because it really guides the work that we do, how we focus our attention as an exec team, and how we make sure that the plan that is agreed by the board is executed annually.
Thanks. In terms of just the report and the presentation of it, is there any way that you can, just make, we're doing it in colour because my printer isn't a colour printer, but if you could put an A and an R perhaps against which high level deliverable sits in which category. If it isn't marked, we assume that it's green, but that would be really helpful, I think, just in terms of being able to see more clearly. And then Councillor Tennant.
Yeah, thanks, Liz. You provided detail on the red one, which was very useful. You just told us there were 6 amber. Well, what are they, and how are they being addressed? And it may be an answer in writing is more appropriate, but just not just the red, but can we have information on the amber as well, please?
Yeah, absolutely. I only provided the red because that was the one via exception that looked slightly in trouble, but the amber ones, based on the commentary provided by HLD owners, expected it to be back on track in the coming months, hence why I think provided, but for any future reports I can provide the additional level of detail around some of the exception HLD performance.
Linda?
Yes, I just wanted to reiterate that. So as a responsible director for this monitoring report, this is the first time we've come here. We can evolve this however it becomes useful for you in terms of giving you that assurance. So we'll certainly take that away. As Jaswell said there, we only decided to put the red in because that was the one that we needed to flag. The amber ones actually we felt will actually come back, but we just wanted to report those by exception. So we'll take it away. We will continue to develop this report to make it a bit more user friendly and less techy as we go on. But it's good to have the first visibility here, I think.
Yeah, I would absolutely support that, and it's something that I was very keen this year that we had oversight of, and it was important that we see the reds and the ambers, and of course they may change as the year progresses between now and the next report, but it's useful to know which are the ambers, because have they moved into green by the time we get into January. So if you could just perhaps provide that as an additional piece for members, please.
Yeah, absolutely.
Lovely, thank you. Any other comments from anybody? No, well, it was a relatively quick and painless one. Thank you for your time and attendance. We look forward to seeing you again at January's meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let's pull back some time, because as usual, I was running behind. Okay, then we move on to the grant register, which, as Linda is with us today, Linda's going to take in place of Kate Taylor. Linda?
Hi, yes, so it's your standard report detailing the current grants on our register and highlights in there the new grants that have been awarded
since you've last had a report. It's there for information, for noting, but I'm happy to take all the questions if anybody has any. Councillor Tennant.
Apologies, I'm talking on today. I noticed one of the new grants is the 1.6 million potholes fund. I may be wrong here, but I wasn't aware that CA is a highways authority. Is that getting parcelled down to local authorities, and how proportionally is it going equal again? Is it going proportionate miles of road?
So the allocation will be in the financial monitoring report to board, and it will get passported through. I can't remember off the top of my head what the allocation is, but government tell us what the allocation is to each of you. We then just passport it through to you.
Thanks.
Any other questions or comments on the grant register? I think it's been quite quiet over the summer, hasn't it? So, anything? No? Yes? Councillor Dorrett?
Does the committee think we ought to actually pull out a few of these and go and investigate them? I mean, it's a great long list of it. I read it, and after halfway down it, I get my eyes hurt because it's so small, and I kind of give up. I just wonder what scrutiny anybody else gives to it. I mean, I noticed the £6 million, and I'm glad you asked the question. But the rest of it, I don't even know what they are. It's got some interesting titles. I just wondered whether we should actually be looking at any of these. Can't look at all of them, but we probably could pick out 5 and have a look at 5.
And I think that's probably why we've pulled out the one about the homes at the start, because that was, 14.9 million. How's that going to go? How's it evolved? I'm not sure how we would do that, if I'm completely honest. And would need to give some thought. Linda?
I suppose, yeah, we could. I'll take that away and give that some thought. I think this is provided for visibility, so you can see all of the funds that are coming into the combined authority, and the stuff we're administering. It aligns back to activity, to the annual business plan, if you like, because the annual business plan that you've just seen is funded by all this money that comes in, and we do amend the annual business plan for new money that comes in. So it might be that you could take a targeted approach based on, if the annual business plan is flagging something as red or amber, then you might want to actually then choose that as being the ones that you might want to take a look at scrutiny, or you could do something by value or of interest. But it is there. I appreciate it. It is just a list for you to just have a look at, and it might flag some attention from somebody in terms of wanting to have a look. But you could do something, as I say, on risk from the annual business plan, or certainly by value, or any others that you would like to pick up on. But we can certainly, if you want to take that away, come up with a programme perhaps to help inform a programme of scrutiny, and we can look at that.
I mean, it's not for this year. I think I'm more thinking about longer term. Should we be looking at it, picking off a few and just checking them through, really?
Well, let us go away, have a think about how it would best work. I mean, I think Linda's suggestion about aligning it to the business plan and ambers and reds would seem a very sensible approach, because is that money working for us, and what are the risks attached to it? So, but let's just go away, have a think about that, and then present something back at a future meeting, if that's okay. Councillor Kettle.
Picking up on just what you were discussing, it came to my mind earlier on that we have, especially when dealing with the long-term housing problems, and I picked up on what you said earlier on, Madam Chair. What I would like to see is some more outcomes, the actual outcome of what we're talking about, because the housing seems to be a pork barrel with no bottom. It seems there forever and nothing happens. And you picked up on this yourself earlier on, when are we going to see something out of this? And, I use the word pork barrel, but the reality is, have we not created another pork barrel, And I would like to see some more outcome, either videos or reports or visits, so that we actually see the reality of what we've been talking about here. And I think it needs to be done. We need outcomes. And, I went over to see some eco houses a couple of years ago, and it was virtually scientific and an interesting project. But I asked the individuals, has anybody ever lived in them yet? And the answer was no. Sometime later, I bumped into another councillor and they'd built 8 and they put families in and the families couldn't wait to get out of them. They hated them. So a lot of our ideas, we ought to see the practical outcomes of what we're talking about. You know, factory built and section built properties, they do have a place in the modern market. Speed, cleanness, the manner of production, and cost. And there must be an all-in benefit for everyone involved. So I would like to see more outcomes of what we're doing. Am I making sense, Madam Chairman?
Always, Councillor Campbell, always. Linda?
Just to say, so at the minute, all of the outcomes, the things that have been progress reports, things that have been delivered, outputs and outcomes are all reported to the individual committee that has approved the money. So a lot of the outcomes get reported, if you like, to
elsewhere.
Yes, to investment board or to the main board. What we could do actually though is, and again this is about us continuing to develop and evolve the assurance reporting on the annual business plan, is to try and pull a more holistic dashboard of the outcomes that are going to all of these different committees, back it through the annual business plan assurance report, because that ultimately is where all the outcomes come back together.
Madam Chair, isn't this the problem we have with 35 committees?
Well, we'll note your comment, Councillor Campbell. Okay, so we'll take that back and have further discussions about that. Okay, so that's item 11 done. So moving on to item 12 then, the West Midlands Combined Authority loan to Woking Borough Council. Now, because this was in the public domain following the Freedom of Information request and questions raised to me by members of the committee, I felt that it was sensible to have it out, have it into the public domain via the Scrutiny Committee. So you will have seen a number of email prints that you've received in your pack. And one that came very late over the weekend, which apologies, but we didn't have the meeting with Linda and Mark until Friday, so that was the reason that was late arriving with you. Now, Mark Smith, who is the chair of ARUC, sends his apologies today. He normally attends this meeting, but he's off somewhere hot and sunny for his holiday, so I'm afraid he can't be with us. I think if we give Linda, you can give a brief presentation on it, and then if anybody wants to ask any further questions or seek any further assurances based on what you heard from Linda and based on what you've read in your pack.
Okay, thank you very much. So you will have had in your pack, you will have the statement that Laura issued at the time, I think, that the press release came out, and you've also had the note from the chair of ARUC, as Councillor Baton has said there, which is giving ARUC's the view of ARUC's role and the assurances that ARUC have had around the Treasury policy operated by the Combined Authority. So just to start with, contrary to what was put in the press and some of the statements that were made, this is not in relation to surplus funds available to the Combined Authority. This is not money that is available to invest. This is essentially surplus cash deposits that we hold in various institutions until we need the cash. So the money, it's things like I get grants in advance. So government gives us grants in advance. I've got that cash in our bank until the point that we need to actually spend it, which might be 6 months, 12 months later, then I'm holding the cash. And I have to deposit that cash somewhere. So that is what this is referring to. This is referring to the Combined Authority's cash deposits, its treasury management activity, not that this was new funds coming into the region that we've handed to a different region. It's just not the case. So we operate our cash deposits and our borrowing through our treasury management strategy. Mark in his note has set out to you where that treasury management strategy gets approved. It gets assured via our ARAC and it gets approved by our board. And ARAC get regular updates on what I'm doing with borrowing and what I'm doing with cash and where I'm investing the cash essentially. Internally then we have operating practices whereby as the finance director, that delegation to operate within that approved treasury management strategy is approved to me, and I operate that within certain operating practices that I have set out, and I review that. I have a formal meeting every month to review what we are doing with our cash. So our treasury management strategies are government and CIPFA compliant, and we also use advisors as noted in there, which are Treasury Management Advisors Link Group. The three loans that or the cash deposits that went out to Woking were awarded. There was 3 loans because it was they were of different timescales. They were agreed at different dates and there were different timescales. So the specific loans that are being questioned in here, there was a £5 million to Woking on the 7th. The deal was agreed on the 17th of February. That was for 9 months, a return of 4.3%. There was a £5 million deal agreed on the 2nd of March. That was for a 12-month deal of 4.6%. And there was a £5 million deal done on the 24th of May. That was for 12 months and a return of 5%. Now, essentially, I have what's called, there are treasury management boundaries, which means I can put our cash, I have to make sure that it's secure, I have to have a diverse spread. So there's a balance between risk and reward, but I obviously can't put all of our cash into one place. I have to make sure there's a diverse spread. And the way that we do that is through our treasury boundaries. And this is all of your local authorities will do this. So with the UK government, I can put an unlimited amount with the UK government for up to 50 years because they are deemed to be, don't want any comments back on this. They are deemed to be that safe in terms of where you can put your money. Local authorities, again, they have an extremely strong covenant because they are underwritten by government, and they have a very small risk of default. Even when they're in Section 114 territory, they still have an extremely strong financial covenant backing behind them. So for local authorities, I can put up to £20 million. With up to 25 years with them. Banks and building societies, for example, they're a little bit more risky. So we have a maximum of 13 months with them, £20 million, and I can only invest up to 50% of our cash portfolio. My normal operating limits are, I only put £10 million to any one institution, but by exception, I am delegated to put up to £20 million with one institution when I have peak cash flows. So when our cash is in excess. So for an example, on the 18th of August, the combined authorities cash balance that I got in the bank was £1 billion. So you can imagine how many places I have to put that cash out at. By the end of March this year, I'm expecting that to go back down to 700 million. So we're at a peak period at the minute, which means I can put out up to £20 million with the different counterparties. So what we do is we operate this through a broker. So all local authorities operate through a broker, and essentially there are 317 local authorities that operate nationally through this broker. Some are in borrowing, some need to borrow, some have got spare cash. Everybody puts their need to borrow all their cash up there, and the broker connects people up. And there's it's short-term cash lending in between local authorities, essentially.
So short term.
So
just wait for questions, Councillor.
So essentially, the loans to Woking are effectively at very little risk of default. They're probably at less risk of default than the money that I've got in cash deposits with financial institutions.
That said, as a result of the press coverage, I did feel that actually, from a professional point of view, that the use of the word that we've been reckless with the money was quite upsetting for me. So I would normally forward deal between six and 8 months ahead with local authorities. But what I have done internally is to advise the team now that they can only forward deal 1 month in advance with a local authority, which will shorten the amount of time that between doing the deal and when a local authority may choose to issue a Section 114 notice. So I've shortened the time. So for the Woking deals, we legally agreed deals with them that we had to honour in advance of them issuing a Section 114. They've later issued a Section 114, but that deal had to still legally go ahead. What I have got though is assurance from the Finance Director of Woking that there is no issues. They've already repaid 2 of their loans. There has been no history of any default of a local authority ever not repaying its interlocal authority borrowing. So the risk is very, very, very small. We have had previous. There are a number of local authorities. I'll come on to this, but there are a number of local authorities, or an increasing number of local authorities who are talking in the press about their financial problems. So we're in an unprecedented time here where the number of local authorities who are now saying they're in financial difficulty is increasing. To issue a Section 114, a local authority, and you will all know this, a local authority just hasn't got enough income to meet its expenditure. What it's not allowed to do though, until it issues Section 114, is to utilise its balance sheet. So you've probably got, you would have to ask for a capitalisation. So you might have a lot of cash, a lot of reserves and a lot of assets, but you still might have to issue a 114 because from an operating perspective, you haven't got enough income and expenditure going through your revenue account. I'm going to tighten, or I have tightened, so I'm only forward dealing now 1 month in advance. And I've said to our team that despite security, despite the covenant, for them not to deal at all with any local authority that has in the press got any sense that they are in financial difficulty. I have also said to take the pressure off our team then, I've also increased the amount of cash that the Treasury Manager will hold in our current account. So at the minute, we hold up to £20 million in our current account and we put the rest out on deposits. To give him a bit of space in that, now I've said he can't forward deal for any more than a month, I've increased that limit up to 50 million. So we can hold 50 million in our current account instead of 20, which gives him a bit of space so he can find better deals. Because at the minute, he can now only forward deal for 1 month. There are implications of that, because I said it's always about a risk of balance, reward and balance, risk here. So actually, as a result, I will be holding more money in our current account that attracts a lower return on investment than other putting cash deposits out. And also because we can only forward deal for a month instead of 6 or 8 months, actually we're unlikely to get us higher in rates of return back on our money as well. So that probably cost annually. That will probably cost about £300,000 in lost return on investment as a result of me doing that. I also need to say to you that I actually have forward deals in place at the minute with 5 authorities, to the tune of £55 million between now and March, who are now in the press citing they're in financial difficulty. Those forward deals include £25 million on 2 deals to Birmingham,
which obviously puts us in a very difficult position. They haven't issued a 114. However, we have a deal with them to issue them £25 million or to borrow them £25 million between now and October, between now and March. So it is about a balance. But as I said, from our perspective and from that of our Treasury advisors, there isn't a risk to interlocal authority cash borrowings. We have put the £15 million with Woking before they issued a 114. I've had a letter of assurance from their finance director that isn't an issue. If you look at places that, there have been other authorities such as Slough, etc., that have been in 114 territory that have now come out the other side of it and have not issued it. There has been no local authority has failed to repay their cash on deposits. So that's the action I've taken as a result. I hope that's clear, but I'm happy to obviously take any questions. I would like to just say, if anybody else has got if anybody else wants any further information or help, our Audit Risk and Assurance Committee gets training from our Treasury advisors annually in every January before they then have a look at our Treasury management strategy. Obviously, over your scrutiny, any members would be welcome to attend that, and you should also actually all be getting Treasury's training through your own local authorities. But it's standard practice. All of your FDs will be doing this. But yeah, happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Linda. Okay, so I've got Councillor Marshall, Councillor Tennant. Did I see somebody's hand up on this side? Councillor McKay. So if I take Councillor Marshall first, Councillor Tennant, and I'll come to yourself, Councillor McKay.
Thank you, Chair. When will this be looked at again? Because my concern is you've obviously reacted to what the media said. I think what we have to do is remember that the media loves a sensational story. They will always try and hype things up. And if we know we are doing the right thing and we are secure, we are now costing ourselves £300,000 a year in lost revenue in order to appease the media. We're not here to appease the media, we're here to do the right thing for our residents. And so I'd like to make sure that this is going to be looked at again in the future so that we can make sure we are making the best decisions for residents, not for the press. Thank you.
Thank you. I would seek to advise, and I have spoken to your FDs about this, that actually should any councillor or leader be approached to give quotes again, that they check with their FDs first to ensure that they are quoting on the reality of the situation rather than not. So the obviously councillors were approached for comment into that press release that weren't informed appropriately that this was about cash deposits and not about resources coming into the region that were being given to a different council. So I think there's a need perhaps for us to make sure that we I will be seeking assurance from your finance directors, is the conversation I've had with them, that before I release that, ease back on those constraints again, that actually your finance directors are happy that your leaders and members are briefed appropriately.
And as Linda pointed out in her first presentation, all the presentations around Treasury management go through AWIC as well. So they will have the opportunity, we'll have a representative on AWIC, or at least the constituent authorities do, to ensure that that's reviewed appropriately. Councillor Tennant.
Thank you for that. So kind of 2 points. First, so obviously the public said about that 15 million issued while they were in Section 114 territory, and while the conversations about Section 114 only happened a few months ago, the financial difficulties were working up in over a couple of years, partly by control of the council changed 2 years ago. Is that 15 million the total we have in Woking, or do we have more that was outside the scope of the FOI request? And second, you talked about how no local, this might be a conversation that actually Aaron needs to have, not us. You talked about how no local authority has defaulted, but you also then talked quite early that we're facing an unprecedented crisis in local government finance. We've never had this many councils issue Section 114s, and we have dozens of councils talking about it. Do we need to reassess the amount of risk associated with lending to local authorities? Because, as you mentioned, the financial difficulty facing local authorities right across this country is kind of without precedent.
Yeah, thank you. So you can imagine how many loans and cash deposits we have out when I've got £1 billion worth of cash. So I will. So yes, whilst I'm pretty sure that 15 million is the only 15 million we have with Woking, I will just double check and confirm that down that list of 100 odd deposits we've got, that is absolutely true. I will confirm that. I think you're right to flag a national issue here. So the brokers actually are still classifying. It's very difficult. Most local authorities don't have a regular rating like a bank would have. Treasury advisors lump local authorities and government in as a collective as AA- rated authorities because of the strength of covenant behind them. So you don't go bankrupt. You've always got money coming in from business rates and council tax. You can always cut. I know this, but in principle, in absolute principles, you can't go bankrupt. You've always got money coming in from council tax and business rates. It's just your expenditure's too big. So ultimately, you've got government backing. Ultimately, government would have to step in and honour that position. So it is a national issue for me. It's not about us revisiting that. I have, as a result of this, tightened our controls down. I have got an issue specifically because I'm about to give 25 million to Birmingham. And I don't want to be on the front page of the press again saying I've been reckless giving that money to Birmingham. So there is some issues here. But I do think it's a national issue. We have talked about it, and we will be raising it with SIPA as well about actually what is the sort of government and SIPA advice to local authorities at this stage? Because at the minute the broker advice is it's AA- and there isn't any risk.
Okay, we've reached 12 o'clock, which would be the normal end of the meeting. I'm proposing that we finish off the questions from people who've indicated this, if that's acceptable to people. I've got Councillor McKee and Councillor Bateman indicating they want to speak, and then I'll end it at that point and move on to the final piece, if that's acceptable to members. Yeah. Okay, so Councillor McKee then.
Yeah, thanks very much. I don't really understand why you've changed, really, because I mean, I understand how it works. I've seen it before with Brum, where we've let the council something for 5 years at one interest rate, and 6 months later we borrow back at a higher interest rate because we're borrowing it back from a year. It doesn't seem to make any sense to me, but I'm told that's how it works. And you're right about Birmingham, got 750 million worth of revenue coming in, and they've got £1 billion about to go out. But and have obviously gone through capitalisation before over something, so it doesn't look good. But I mean, they're talking to the government, etc., and the government in all these scenarios is the lender of last resort, and the government is not going to let a council go under just because of what that does to the overall economy and everything that happens. So yeah, I can imagine we've all been in the press at times, and it's not nice when people say things that aren't true and things like that, but kind of goes to the territory, doesn't it, really? And you've just got to sort of rock on. And so that's what sort of confused me a bit, was that, government lender of last resort, if we're going to start putting money in the building on the banks, which the banks were told are not as reliable as local government, well then, to me, it's almost like, the Birmingham Mail's dictating the financial policy of the combined authority rather than actually looking for what is the best place to put the money. And I might be misunderstanding what you've said there, but that's the way that it seemed to come across. And, just because, I mean, there's a lot of there's a lot of financial scares and things going around, but I would say that local authorities are a safer bet financially than some of the banks, I would say. So as far as I'm told, they can't default on this loan. You know, to me, the money, they're good for the cash. So thank you, Chair.
Laura?
So the reason I want to respond is because I asked Linda to look at what could be done to tighten it, because we haven't, in my experience, ever been in a situation with so many local authorities either on the edge of or trailing in the press that they are near to issuing a 114. It is something Eric will keep an eye on to make sure, but the bringing the time frame in closer just gives us that additional certainty about where we are putting out those loans. So it was me that asked for it. It's a very good point that we will be reviewing it constantly, which we will, but we also we also had constituent members, the constituent members that pay our fees and contribute to the transport levy, challenging our professional judgment in the media. So as a result,
could you just wait to have your conversation afterwards, please? It's so distracting.
so as a result, that was my decision, because it's one thing if it's not substantiated by our members, but when our members are making comments and questioning professional integrity, then I feel it's something I need to do to look at, to put something in short term, to make sure that while we're in this moment, which I do think is unusual with the number of local authorities where we are, and then that can be reviewed quite quickly and changed to the treasury management system. So that was the decision I took as chief executive, and that's the reason I did it.
Thanks for that clarity, Laura. Councillor Bateman, finally.
Thank you. I think setting the situation straight now is so important. Whether we like it or whether we that news act as a severe jolt and was undoubtedly had a big impact on not just local government, but of course people who live in the area, no doubt about it. I think probably the biggest shock was the response from the local government, from elected members. Because whether or not they made the headlines or not, they certainly were talking about it in their local authorities and the like, as they tried to grapple with what was being said through the media. Now, local government's all about systems. Now, I do remember one of our august treasurers saying to me many years ago, about 40 years ago, but it's our systems that uncovered the problem. You know, the issue is all about systems, and I think if it's done anything at all, it's brought into sharp focus as the combined authority is still a new authority. It's brought into sharp focus the roles that we as local authorities are involved with. You know, I do remember the BCCI going under. I do remember the Transport Authority losing a great deal of money at that time. It was a shock. I was chair of the authority. It happens. These things happen. Lots of things went on after that that put right the issues that were there at the time. Nobody had done anything fraudulently, but in that case, a bank went under. I think it's right and proper that the authority, through the combined authority, through Laura and her team, have moved quickly to try to shore up the systems that's in place and make proper the information that relates to the checks and balances that's there. The public need to know that. That's really, really important, because otherwise they're going to lose their trust in the elected members and indeed the authorities that take part here in the West Midlands. I think it's unfortunate what's happened. I think there's been an action that's gone forward fairly quickly to try to, like I say, shore up the issue. And if it puts more attention on the arrangements then there's some good that will have come out of it. I think the biggest shock is that local elected members didn't know in the first instance what had happened. And I think there's a lesson there to be learned by people within the combined authority and the elected member and the mayor. One needs to be aware that these things can happen, and yet we are living in very difficult times, and there is more local authorities being quoted as being close to their limits and their liabilities. And there may well be more, but I'm really pleased with the way in which the officers of this combined authority have reacted, especially in terms of the way in which they're explaining things to us now, because that will help go a long way towards anything happening like this again. I think it's the only way forward, but it's not particularly something that any of us would want to go through again. Though, and you know, we are living in really difficult times. I get the impression that government, whether it be national government or local government, is in a state of quandary, and I think the public see it as well, because they're so used to being local authorities, being the rock solid pillar of the establishment, and things like this don't happen. Well, you know, we are in different times. So thanks very much. I think you did a really good job in making it clear to us here today, and I think that will go a long way to putting some of the correction right.
Thank you. I just want to reiterate that there is not a decision that this authority took that was in any way, shape or form in doubt by us as officers. Linda was doing her job exactly as she should. And I guess it's really a request to you as members, which is when people do come to ask you to comment on things or in your council, and it has to do with the finance. I think perhaps to make an effort to speak to relevant officers here before commenting, because the comments in the press were inaccurate. And, you know, as chief executive, it's my job to put those things, and we did not go back out necessarily with a rebuttal to that, because we did have constituent members comment, but the comments were inaccurate, and they were inaccurate about the professionalism of our officers. And so I just want to be very clear around this table that there's absolutely no issue that we did anything as officers that we were not both able to do, both were not acting in any way outside of jurisdiction or prudence. And in fact, it would be really helpful if you could feed back in your own authorities that should you be approached to make a comment about something like that, that it would be most helpful to speak either with your own FD or with ours in the first place, because this whole thing could have been avoided, I think, had that not happened.
I think it's all, I mean, I think the offer of treasury management training for this committee will be helpful because it is a complex and difficult landscape if you're not a finance person and you don't have any understanding of it. But I think it's also just worth, before we close, just commenting that obviously the external auditors have oversight and have always had oversight of activity, and they had raised no concerns about that. So I think you're right. I think it's an understanding of process, and it's an understanding of how people or institutions operate that we probably, I certainly didn't have. I think I've got a slightly better understanding now, but I think that would be very valuable for members of this committee. Yeah, thanks, Laura. So if I can move us on then to the work programme, there's not much to say on that. You've got the work programme. There is an addition to the 6th of November's meeting where we'll have an update from Homelessness Task Force before it goes to board. And just to go back to what I said at the outset, does the committee feel that a deep dive into brownfield would be beneficial? If I can just have an indication of an indication of a show of hands on that. Either if you want to go ahead with a deep dive into brownfield, can you just give a show of hands, please? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so that's fine. So we will look to do that. If we probably need 4 to 5 members from the committee to take part in that. If I can ask you, if you've got a specific interest in it, I'm guessing Councillor Burrows has, please forward your names to Lindsay in the next week or two. And on that, I haven't run too much over. I'm going to close the meeting and we'll see you all for the mayoral workshop on the 6th of October. Remember, that's hybrid, so you can either be in the room or on Teams for that. And we'll have the mayor's question time policy on the 19th, which everybody needs to be in the room for in terms of quorum. Thank you.
Thank you.
We've missed you, Vera. We've missed you, Vera.
Oh, bless you. Thank you.
See you next time.
Yeah, see you next time.